Welcome to chess, ladies and gentlemen. Maligayang pagdating sa chess, ladies and gentlemen. I think I said that correctly. Check. Double check it. Yeah. Maligayang pagdating sa chess. Yes. Welcome to chess, ladies and gentlemen. So what I did was I jumped a year forward. So I have the World Cup chess tournament from 2009. So I have Vassily Ivanchuk versus Wesley. So, and for any of you guys that play chess, I'm sure you guys know Vassily Ivanchuk. He is a super OG in the game. Been playing since the late 80s. You know, so he's definitely been a force. And he's pretty much beaten everybody. You know, he's definitely one of those guys. I mean, he's I want to say he's in his 60s now, but I mean, it's like he's one of those guys that like pretty much like time doesn't, you know, like time doesn't really age you like where you think you're gonna get aged. He's still playing sharp chess. He's pretty much been active the whole time, so that's like, you know, 35 years or whatever. So it's crazy. But we do have this game here, for, like I said, from the World Cup. And that's reminding me, I need to make Vassily Ivanchuk one of my chess legends down there. I already wrote it down, so I'm on it. But if you guys are ready to go, let's go ahead and take a look, see what we have for this game. All right, so we got e4, e6. We got d4, d5, knight to c3, bishop to b4. And we do have the French winnower variation. It's one of the most common variations you're going to see. You know, the idea for black is just to try to like damage white's pawn structure here, which isn't usually that bad of a situation because you do have a lot of open, you know, play on this side of the board. You know, sometimes you'll see like the advanced, and you guys can see you guys have a lot of play over here on this board. You can got queen to g4s, you know, bishop to g5 situations coming, so it can get kind of nasty for black. But we do see pawn takes d5, pawn takes d5, so we have the French winnower exchange. Bishop comes to d3. You know, in this particular situation, you know, we're not worried about, you know, the bishop taking. We're just going to be playing like either knight to f3 or knight g to e2, and castling, getting out of the way. So knight comes to f6. We see knight to e2. Castles, we got castles, and then bishop comes to g4. And this is very easily dealt with because of the fact that you went knight g to e2 instead of knight to f3. You can just go ahead and kick that bishop back with f3. Bishop comes back to h5. We see knight to f4. So you're just constantly harassing that bishop. And more often than not, it gets snapped off the board. So bishop comes to g6, and then we see knight takes g6. So h takes g6. We see bishop to g5. Still not worried about this exchange over here. We see c6. We see f4. Queen comes to b6, which could be a little bit annoying. Probably one of the most, you know, common ways is just going to go knight to e2, or even bishop takes here. You're going to be good to go. But we do see knight to a4, which is the novelty of the game. It's pretty sound. It's not the top move, but it's like kind of in the fray. So it's kind of up there. So we do see queen takes d4 with check. We see king over to h1, and we have a very nifty, you know, little attack coming up here, possibly. So we do see knight to e4, and you guys can see, like, you know, the special, you know, knight fork trying to come up. So we do see c3, knight takes f2 with check, or knight to f2 with check. Rook takes f2, queen takes f2, and then we see pawn takes b4. And it's not an entire piece because black does have the ability to you know, to attack. And of course, you're not going to be backing up here because you're just going to be losing the bishop completely. So we do see queen to g4, pawn takes g5. We see queen to e6 with check. King comes over to h8. And then we see knight to c5. You know, we are not trying to, you know, just try to get a little checkmate in here because the queen coming back to h4, it does take care of that problem. And so, you know, you're not doing as great as you thought. So after we go ahead and see knight to c5. Queen takes on b2. We have queen to h3 with check. King comes to h8. We see queen back to e6 with check. King to h8. And then we see rook to f1. We see queen back to f6. So it's kind of crazy because up until this point in the game, you know, we've pretty much been seeing like only moves. You know, the position is fairly equal for either side, but both sides have pretty much been playing like the only move in the position. So it's kind of crazy when you get in positions like that where there's really only one move to play. Any other move is going to worsen your position. So it's interesting to see players like actually find all of these different moves. So we do see queen coming back to h3 with check. We see king to g8. We see g3. You know, we would like to just kind of like, you know, capture here and threaten the queen. But the queen would actually just give itself up in this position because you're going to be looking at back rank mate. And that's always sad. So we do see g3 first. We see rook over to e8. And then we see knight takes b7. This pawn actually costs white quite a bit. It might kind of seem like you're just grabbing a pawn, but you know, you are down the exchange here as white. So, I mean, there's slightly different way you have to play. So, pawn takes f4. We see rook taking f4, but we do see rook to e1 with check. King comes up to g2, and then we see queen to e6. And black is really wanting some type of trade. So, white goes ahead and obliges him. Queen takes e6, and then we see rook takes e6. In this particular situation, you can also go queen to h4. Just trying to sidestep that, but we are going to be seeing queen to e7, and not immediately, but you do kind of have some problems. The queen, and then you have some problems with this knight over here. So, you know, if you do decline a trade, queen coming to h3, you would actually be seeing knight to d7, bishop taking g6, but then knight to f6. You can see this knight just perfectly comes and protects in time. You can't even sacrifice the rook, because you're going to be looking at pawn takes, and then the queen is going to be defending laterally. So knight would probably come back to c5, and you actually see a5, you know, trying to, you know, break down your support and open this file up for this rook. So like I said, we do see queen taking e6, rook taking e6. We see knight down to c5. We see rook to e7. We see b5. Knight comes to d7. So like what you're trying to do with b5 is you're trying to break up this little, you know, this nice little pawn chain. But knight to d7 is just perfectly in time. So this knight pretty much like had so many different moves in the positions that, you know, kind of made it, you know, where it was just in time. So knight took d7. We saw rook take d7. Pawn taking c6. We see rook to d6. Bishop to b5. We see rook over to e8. Rook comes to d4. We see king down to f7. Now we are just like truly down in exchange. Yes, black kind of has some bad pawns over here, but you know, you are down an entire exchange, and now this king is starting to get active. So it's not looking very pretty for white. So the rook comes to f4 with check. We see king to e6. Rook to g4. We see king down to e5. So as you can see, like compared to this white king, this black king is like very dominant. So we see king up to f3. We see rook to f6 with check. We see king over to e3. And it is actually in this position that Vassily Ivanchuk does resign the game. You know, I'm going to go ahead and give you two different variations as to like why he resigned the game. So if we just kind of like, you know, continue to play forward, you know, the king is most likely going to come to d6 and discover an attack on the king. King is going to be coming up to d4. And I mean, you have multiple different ways that you can try to, you know, take advantage of the situation. You know, you have just rook to e4, just simply trading off the rook. Rook will be taking on e4. Pawn will be taking on, you know, e4. And then king would be taking on e4. And then you have rook down to f2. And you can see this is a super rook on the 7th. So this is not really where you want to be. And also, after, let me see here. After king came to d4, you also have like the super strong actually rook over to b8. And rook to b8 is really annoying because you don't really have a good place to put your bishop. And I mean, the rook is attacking it, and you kind of like that's really the only piece that's really defending this pawn. So it's kind of annoying. You would actually be looking at c7 just as a way to try to move the king a little bit away from your bishop so you can defend it. And so after king takes on c7, you would see queen to c5. You know, you can even sacrifice here if you want to, or just push a6. You know, a6 is going to back the bishop up, and you know, get one of these rooks to be on the 7th rank. You know, because if you instead of c7, if you actually went bishop to a4, just like really trying to hold on to this this pawn, you're going to be really depressed after rook to b4 with check. And you can see that once this rook moves, or once this king moves, this rook is going to cry like a bunch of tears. It's going to be like, you know, flooding this whole floor area up with tears. So that is all she wrote. So those are pretty much the reasons why, you know, white resigns the game, because they're able to see that these different possibilities are going to be coming up. And, you know, you get to a point in a lot of positions where, like, I mean, you can just tell, you can just feel that it's not holdable. So, you know, you go ahead and just throw the towel in. And you're playing some of the best players in the world. So, I mean, you know that they're capable of doing what they do. But for all of my people in the Philippines, I did realize like halfway through the video that I didn't get a like I guess the move section. I don't really think there was like a lot of good spots to really get one anyway. But like I said, I realized I forgot it, so I couldn't really find, as I was going through the video, like a good spot to stop, because I mean everything was pretty much kind of like obvious. But for all of my people in the Philippines, get these good mornings. So maayong buntag, mayad na agahan, naibag na biga, masantos ya kabason, marhay na aga, buenos dias, maayong aga, mapia na uma, kapiyon kapuno Dios, mayapa abak, mayad na aga, mapia agay, mapia kapapita, my big abukla, maraja na buntag, marya my nat, maupe na aga, kasanyangan CLOB, salam, assalamu alaikum, merci beaucoup. Appreciate you guys very much. I think I got them correctly. Yes, I can do pretty good on them sometimes, but I appreciate you guys very much. Maraming salamat po sa nanonood ing aking channel, aking kaibigan. Paalam, mabuting pagbati, ingat lagi, and I'll see you guys next time.